Texas isn't growing the way most people think it is. Yes, the headlines talk about booming metros, corporate relocations, and nonstop construction. In recent years, major cities like Austin, Dallas, and Houston have absorbed large migration waves, pushing housing costs sharply upward and reshaping local economies. But outside those high-growth corridors, the story changes. Across the state, there are towns where population levels have remained flat for years, where job markets expand slowly if at all, and where long-term momentum feels limited. Growth in Texas is real. It's just uneven. And uneven growth creates very different outcomes depending on where you land. This ranking focuses on structural movement. Towns earn credit for sustained population growth, diversified employment, and forward economic pressure. They lose points for stagnation, heavy dependence on a single industry, or long-term demographic drift. Let's start with number 10, Sweetwater. Sweetwater is defined by energy and agriculture, and that identity hasn't shifted much. Wind farms dominate the landscape, ranching remains central, and the economic base is steady but narrow. Population figures in recent years are often described as flat, with little of the in-migration seen in larger Texas corridors. Housing costs are relatively manageable, which sounds appealing at first glance. The trade-off is limited access to diversified, higher-paying industries. If your skills fall outside energy or agriculture, options narrow quickly. Career mobility often means commuting long distances or relocating entirely. Stability is the strength here, and it's also the ceiling. Number 9, Brownfield. Brownfield revolves around cotton and agriculture, and that dependence shapes everything. When commodity markets fluctuate, the local economy feels it almost immediately. Over longer reporting periods, population trends have frequently been described as slightly declining, particularly as younger residents relocate toward larger employment hubs. Housing remains affordable, and everyday expenses tend to stay predictable. Property appreciation, however, has been modest compared to statewide averages. Compared to Sweetwater, Brownfield leans even more heavily on a single economic pillar, increasing long-term vulnerability. The pace of life is consistent, so is the economic range. Number 8, Vernon. Vernon functions as a regional service center, supporting surrounding rural communities with healthcare facilities, correctional institutions, and light manufacturing. That structure provides baseline employment and keeps local systems running, but significant private sector expansion has been limited. Crime rates are sometimes reported as higher than expected for a town of its size. Not extreme, but enough to shape perception and affect housing demand. Population growth has remained minimal, and major outside investment has not accelerated meaningfully. Compared to Brownfield, Vernon has slightly broader infrastructure and services, yet the long-term trajectory feels similar. It operates reliably, but it definitely doesn't build momentum. Number 7, Marlin. Marlin once thrived as a mineral springs destination, drawing visitors decades ago. That era has long passed. Revitalization efforts surface periodically, though lasting transformation has proven difficult. Population decline has been a recurring theme in long-term data, and economic activity remains concentrated in a small number of sectors. When tax bases shrink, infrastructure maintenance becomes harder. Roads, public spaces, and utilities can reflect that strain over time. Compared to Vernon, Marlin lacks even the stronger service center buffer. It feels more dependent on external catalysts that have yet to materialize. For residents seeking quiet and low density, that may be appealing. For those seeking upward mobility, it can feel restrictive. Number 6, Borger. Borger is closely tied to oil refining and petrochemical production. During strong energy cycles, wages can be solid and employment steady. But during downturns, volatility becomes visible. Housing demand often tracks oil prices, and broader Texas insurance trends can influence costs in industrial regions. Compared to Marlin, Borger has greater industrial strength, but that strength is linked to external global markets. When energy prices swing, local stability follows. Long-term predictability depends on forces beyond local policy or planning. It isn't collapsing, it's structurally exposed. Number 5, Raymondville. Raymondville, in South Texas, relies on agriculture, government employment, and local services. Income levels are often reported below state averages, and large-scale private investment has been limited. Population growth has not mirrored the surge seen in major Texas metros. Housing remains accessible, and daily costs are manageable. Property appreciation, however, has tended to trail higher growth regions. Compared to Borger's boom and bust pattern, Raymondville experiences something slower. Not dramatic cycles, just gradual economic drift. Over long timelines, slow drift can quietly compound. Number 4, Big Spring. Big Spring carries a name that suggests momentum. The economic structure is more cyclical. Energy production and correctional facilities anchor employment, creating relative stability during strong commodity periods. When oil softens, pressure follows. Property values have risen at times alongside broader Texas trends, though not with sustained intensity. Retail expansion and diversification have been measured rather than rapid. Compared to Raymondville, Big Spring has deeper industrial capacity, yet that depth ties it closely to commodity cycles. The town doesn't lack infrastructure, it lacks sustained acceleration. Number 3, Port Arthur. Port Arthur sits along the Gulf Coast with substantial refinery capacity and shipping infrastructure. Industrial scale here is significant, and wages in energy sectors can be competitive. On paper, that signals economic strength. Yet, over longer periods, population trends are often described as declining. Storm exposure is a constant variable, and coastal insurance premiums have risen in recent years, directly affecting homeowners. Flood risk influences building standards, lending decisions, and long-term planning. Compared to Big Spring, the economy is larger in scale, but environmental exposure introduces persistent structural risk. Industrial output alone hasn't translated into demographic momentum. Number 2, Galveston. Galveston is widely viewed as a charming coastal city with historic architecture and steady tourism. Beaches draw visitors, weekend traffic fills the streets. So the assumption is simple: tourism equals permanent growth. Tourism generates revenue, but often seasonally and unevenly. Coastal property values have climbed in recent years, and insurance premiums have risen sharply due to storm risk. That combination can strain full-time residents and first-time buyers. The job market leans heavily toward hospitality, healthcare, and port-related work, creating opportunity but limited diversification. Compared to Port Arthur, Galveston offers stronger aesthetics and visitor appeal. Both share environmental vulnerability. Beauty attracts attention. It does not automatically guarantee durable structural expansion. And that brings us to number 1, Wichita Falls. Wichita Falls is not an isolated rural outpost. It has military presence, healthcare institutions, education infrastructure, and established neighborhoods. There is no singular environmental threat dominating the outlook. It appears balanced and functional. Still, population growth has frequently been described as flat or slightly declining in recent years, particularly as younger residents relocate to larger Texas metros with broader job pipelines. Housing remains relatively affordable, and daily expenses are manageable. Property appreciation has generally trailed higher growth markets, and economic diversification progresses gradually. There is no dramatic crisis here. That's the point. Compared to Galveston's insurance pressures or Port Arthur's storm exposure, Wichita Falls represents something quieter, a structural plateau inside a state known for rapid expansion. When surrounding metros accelerate and capital concentrates elsewhere, flat growth becomes its own form of risk. Over time, slower appreciation, limited sector expansion, and outward migration can compound into long-term opportunity gaps. Texas overall is growing, but growth is uneven, and not every town captures that momentum. Lower housing costs often come with slower opportunity expansion. Stability can reduce volatility. It can also limit upward mobility. These rankings reflect structural trade-offs, not moral judgments. If you prefer clear trend analysis over marketing slogans and want to understand where real momentum exists and where it doesn't, consider subscribing. Next time, we'll look at fast-growing Texas towns and ask a harder question: how durable is that growth, really?